Ava Montgomery had exactly 3 minutes to decide if it was worth risking everything for a man who complained about pillows. It wasn't a dramatic decision in the classic sense. There was no background music, no audience. There was just her, standing in the narrow corridor of Deck 6, holding white sheets like they were a shield, watching the passenger from Suite 312 step out of the elevator with that crooked smile that left her simultaneously irritated and curious. Daniel, or Dan, as he insisted on being called, wore a wrinkled linen shirt that probably cost more than 3 months of her salary and had the kind of tan you only get when money isn't an issue. He waved. She pretended not to see. Because the last thing Ava Montgomery needed, after finally landing her first big contract as a stewardess on a luxury cruise, was to get involved with a passenger, especially one who seemed to have been designed by the universe to test all her professional limits. Ava's life had always smelled like the ocean, but never tasted like champagne. Growing up in Jacksonville, daughter of a fisherman, granddaughter of a Southern Baptist church lady, sister of a surfer, meant understanding early on that luxury was something for people who lived on the other side of the St. Johns River. It was for those who arrived in imported cars, stayed in 5-star hotels, and never had to check the price of shrimp at the restaurant. Ava looked at those people with a mixture of fascination and distance, like someone observing stars, beautiful, unreachable, completely outside everyday reality. So when she landed the position to work on the Mediterranean Dreams, the most luxurious ship of the Prescott Maritime Group, it was like winning an entry ticket to a world that had only existed in the magazines her grandmother saved. 30 days. Jacksonville to the Mediterranean. Decent salary, valuable experience, possibility of opening doors in the hospitality sector. Ava could barely sleep the night before boarding, mentally reviewing each protocol, each rule, each detail of the impeccable uniform she now wore. The problem, because there's always a problem, started on the second day of the voyage. Ava was finishing cleaning Suite 312 when she heard the door open behind her. She turned, already with a professional smile on her face, and came face to face with him. Tall, dark hair, slightly tousled by the sea wind, brown eyes that always seemed to be evaluating something, and that posture of someone who never had to ask permission to enter anywhere. "Sorry, I thought no one was here," he said. But he didn't seem sorry at all. He seemed, in fact, slightly amused. Finishing, sir. 5 more minutes. Dan. You can call me Dan. And take your time, please. I should have warned you before entering." Ava nodded, returning to smooth the bedspread with precise movements. She felt his gaze following each gesture, which left her strangely self-conscious, as if her movements became more awkward under observation. "You're new here, aren't you?" he asked, leaning against the wall with studied casualness. "It's my first voyage. You can tell by the enthusiasm." There was humor in his voice, not cruelty. Most of the crew already has that look of preferring to be anywhere else. Ava allowed herself a small smile while adjusting the curtains, maybe because most have already discovered that working on a luxury ship is less glamorous than it seems. And you haven't discovered that yet. I discovered it on the first day. But I need the job, so we'll keep smiling. He laughed. It was a genuine laugh, not the polite laugh of someone making conversation. Honesty. Interesting. Most people here only say what they think I want to hear. Maybe because you seem like the type of person who would expect that. Ava didn't know where that boldness had come from. Maybe it was the exhaustion from 5 hours of sleep. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't use the imperious tone of other wealthy passengers. Maybe it was simply because she was tired of pretending to be invisible. But the moment the words came out, she was already expecting a complaint, a scolding, maybe even a call to the ship's director. Instead, Daniel smiled. A slow smile, as if she had said something extraordinarily funny. "Touché, you know. I think I'm going to like having you take care of this suite." And that's how, with a simple phrase and a crooked smile, Ava Montgomery's problem began. Because Dan, wasn't like the other passengers. He didn't ignore the crew as if they were furniture. He talked, asked names, made jokes, left absurdly generous tips. More than that, he seemed genuinely interested in the answers. When Ava casually mentioned she had studied hospitality, he wanted to know about the course, about her plans, about why she had chosen that area. When she commented that she loved photographing the sunset from the deck, he appeared the next day with tips about natural lighting. It was dangerous, not because he was inappropriate or disrespectful. On the contrary, he was too polite, too kind, too interesting. It was dangerous because it made Ava forget, for brief moments, that there was a social abyss between them, that she was the employee and he was the client, that this voyage had a deadline to end, and that people like him didn't stay with people like her when the ship docked. "You're playing with fire," warned Sophie, her best friend and fellow stewardess, while they folded towels in the storage room. Sophie was 26, from Savannah, and possessed that practical wisdom of someone who had already seen many people get hurt on cruise ships. Handsome and polite passenger is like sugar-free chocolate. Seems harmless, but will give you trouble just the same. I know that. I'm not doing anything yet, but I saw how you smile when he appears, and I saw how he looks at you when he thinks no one is paying attention. Sophie, I'm just saying I've seen this story before. And it usually ends with the crew member being sent away and the rich passenger returning to his perfect life, as if nothing happened. Ava knew her friend was right. She knew the rules, had signed the contract, but there was something about Daniel that intrigued her beyond the obvious attraction. He seemed to be running from something. She recognized that look because it was the same one she saw in the mirror. That feeling of playing a role that didn't quite fit, of being in a place that wasn't exactly yours. On the third night during the gala dinner, Ava was serving champagne in the main lounge when she heard his voice behind her. "I need your help." She turned, almost dropping the tray. Daniel was impeccable in a tuxedo, but there was tension in his shoulders. "What happened?" "My tie. I can't get the knot right. I know it's ridiculous, but could you—" It was completely inappropriate. They were in public. There were other staff nearby. But something in his tone, a genuine vulnerability mixed with self-deprecating humor, made her nod. "Come." They moved to a more discreet corner. Ava set the tray aside and, with fingers that trembled slightly, undid the badly made knot and began to redo it. She was so close she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody, but subtle. She could see a small shaving cut on his jaw, a small scar near his eyebrow. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked quietly. "My dad. He wears a tie at weddings, always asked for my help because his hands shook with nerves. Your dad sounds like a good person. Hair's the best." Ava finished the knot, smoothed the tie, and only then realized she was practically pressed against him. She took a step back, professional again. "Done. Thank you." He didn't move immediately. He stood there, looking at her with an intensity that made her blush. "Ava, Mr. Dan, your table is waiting," interrupted an icy voice. Both turned. Victoria Ashford, the passenger from the royal suite, was watching them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was the type of woman who seemed to have stepped out of a fashion magazine. Blonde, thin, covered in jewelry that probably cost more than Ava's house. And she was clearly displeased with the scene. "I'm coming," Daniel responded with cold politeness. Victoria passed Ava without looking, as if she were a piece of furniture, but there was something in the air, a new tension, a silent threat. Sophie appeared beside her seconds later, grabbing the tray. "Did you see who was watching?" "Victoria?" "No, Director Richard," and he didn't look happy. Ava felt a chill down her spine. Richard Carter was known for being ruthless with employees who forgot their place, and she had just given him exactly the kind of ammunition he loved to use. The Mediterranean in October had that almost unreal quality of light, golden, soft, making everything seem slightly more beautiful than it really was. Ava discovered this the next morning when she woke up at 5 in the morning to start her shift, and found the outer deck practically empty, just the sound of waves and the glow of the rising sun, painting the sky pink and orange. She had 15 minutes before officially starting work. She took her phone out of her pocket and photographed the horizon, thinking about sending it to her dad and Jake, her brother, who were probably still sleeping in Jacksonville. She felt a pang of homesickness, for that familiar noise of the house in the morning, for the coffee her grandmother brewed while humming, for her dad's welcome complaints about the tide. You can't sleep on ships either. Ava almost dropped her phone. She turned and found Daniel leaning against the railing a few meters away, wearing sweatpants and a simple t-shirt. He looked like he had just woken up, hair messy, eyes still slightly puffy from sleep. "I wake up early. It's part of the job," she responded, trying to maintain a professional tone despite her racing heart. "Right. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt." But he didn't walk away. Instead, he came closer, looking at the same horizon she had photographed. "It's beautiful, isn't it? No matter how much I travel, I never get tired of this." "You travel a lot? Too much, probably." There was something melancholic in his voice. "Sometimes I think I spend more time in airports and hotels than at home. Must be an interesting life." Daniel laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "Interesting. That's one word for it. It can also be lonely, exhausting, and make you wonder if you really know any place or if you just collect passport stamps." Ava observed him with renewed curiosity. There it was again, that crack in the armor, that moment when he let something real escape beneath the persona of a carefree, wealthy tourist. "Why are you here then?" she asked, before she could censor herself. "On this ship, I mean. If traveling makes you feel this way." He looked at her in a way that made her momentarily forget she was wearing a work uniform and had her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Because sometimes running away seems easier than facing things. And because maybe I was hoping to find something different. And did you? I'm starting to think I did. There was something in the air between them. A connection Ava couldn't name, but that scared her with its intensity. She should walk away. Should remember the rules, the contract, Sophie's warning. But her feet seemed glued to the floor. It was Daniel who broke the moment, looking at his watch. "You need to start working. And bothering you." "A little," she admitted with a small smile. "Then he'll go. But Ava..." He hesitated as if weighing his words. "Thank you for being real. It's rare to find that." And then he left, leaving her alone on the deck with her heart beating in a way it definitely shouldn't beat for a passenger. The rest of the day was a succession of mechanical tasks. Cleaning suites, changing towels, replenishing amenities, smiling politely at people who barely looked at her. But Ava's mind was elsewhere, replaying the morning conversation, trying to decipher what exactly was happening. In the afternoon, while organizing the supplies cart, Sophie appeared with a worried expression. "I need to tell you something." "What?" "Victoria is spreading rumors, saying you're having an affair with a passenger, that you're offering yourself to him. Those disgusting things." Ava felt her blood freeze. "But I haven't done anything." "I know that. You know that. But you know how it is. People love good gossip, especially if it involves someone from the crew crossing the line. Does Director Richard already know? If he doesn't, he will. Victoria dines with him regularly. I think she has some connection with the company." Ava closed her eyes, trying to control the panic. She needed this job, needed this experience. Couldn't be sent away because of unfounded rumors. What do I do? Stay away from Dan? At least in public. No conversations, no smiles, nothing that can be misinterpreted. I know it's unfair, but... "I know." Ava let out the air slowly. "You're right. Thank you for warning me." But when she returned to Suite 312 that afternoon, Daniel was there, and the situation spiraled completely out of control. She knocked before entering as she always did. There was no answer. Using the master key, she opened the door slowly and froze. The suite was turned upside down. Open drawers, clothes thrown around, belongings scattered, and Daniel was in the middle of the mess, looking furious and lost at the same time. "What happened?" asked Ava, dropping the cart and entering quickly. "Someone came in here, went through my things." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "Nothing was stolen as far as I can see, but damn, who does something like this?" Ava began to assess the damage, her hospitality training automatically kicking in. "I'll call security." "And the director?" "No." The answer was quick, almost desperate. "I don't want attention, please." She looked at him, confused. "But you were invaded. This is serious." "I know. but I have my reasons for not wanting fuss." He sighed, seeming suddenly exhausted. "Can you just help me clean up? I'll pay extra whatever you want. You don't need to pay me." Ava began to pick up clothes from the floor, folding them carefully. "But it's looking more and more like you're running from something big." "I am." He picked up a fallen shirt and stood holding it, as if he had forgotten what to do. "And the less you know, the better. Should that worry me? Probably." They worked in silence for a few minutes, reorganizing the suite. There was something strangely intimate about it. Seeing his personal belongings, the books he read, the photos he carried, one in particular caught her attention. A younger Daniel, next to a beautiful woman with the same smile. "Your mom?" asked Ava without thinking. "My sister, Emily." Daniel took the photo, looking at it with obvious affection. "She's the only person in my family who really understands me." "Are you close?" "We were. Still are, I think. But it's complicated when you're trying to be someone different from what your family expects." Ava didn't respond, just kept organizing, feeling that each piece of information he let slip was a piece of a much larger puzzle. When they finished, the suite was impeccable again. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, looking exhausted. "Thank you, really. You're welcome." Ava hesitated, knowing she should leave but unable to move. "Dan, if you're in some kind of danger, I'm not. Not the way you're thinking." He stood up, approaching her. "But you're right to keep your distance. I'm not a good bet for anyone right now. I don't know what you're talking about. I know you do." He was too close now, so close she could see the golden flecks in his brown eyes. "And I know it's unfair of me, but every time you come into this suite, I find myself waiting. It's pathetic." Ava's heart was beating so loud she was sure he could hear it. "I wait too," she admitted in a low voice. "This is a problem. It's a huge problem. What are we going to do?" "I don't know." They stood there, inches from each other, the world shrinking to that tiny space. Ava knew she should pull away, should remember Sophie, Victoria, the rules, the job. But all of that seemed distant and unimportant compared to the feeling of being there, in that moment, with him. It was the intercom that saved them, or condemned them. "Miss Ava Montgomery, report to Director Richard's office immediately." They pulled apart as if they had been shocked. Ava grabbed the cart with trembling hands. "I have to go." "Ava, wait." But she had already left, practically running down the corridor, her heart in her throat. Because she knew, with a cold and terrible certainty, that her life was about to get complicated. Director Richard Carter's office was on deck 3, a room that managed to be both luxurious and intimidating at the same time. Dark wood walls, nautical paintings, a huge desk that the director used as a physical barrier between himself and any summoned employee. Ava had seen colleagues enter there confident and leave visibly shaken. She knocked on the door, breathing deeply to control the tremor in her hands. "Come in." Richard was sitting behind the desk, with the upright posture of someone who had absolute certainty of his power. He was a man in his 50s, impeccably combed grey hair, a suit that probably cost more than Ava's annual salary, and he had that look, that expression of someone who was evaluating how much you were worth, and had already decided it wasn't much. "Miss Montgomery, sit down." Ava sat, keeping her back straight, hands crossed in her lap. Everything about her screaming professionalism, even though inside she was panicking. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, sir." "No?" He raised an eyebrow, as if her answer were personally offensive. "So you have nothing to tell me? No behavior that might have been inappropriate?" "No, sir. I fulfill all my obligations, have been receiving positive evaluations. I'm talking about your relationship with the passenger in Suite 312. There it was, the shot she was expecting. "I don't have any relationship with Mr. Dan beyond professional. I take care of cleaning his suite like I do with 6 other suites. And the private conversations, the moments alone, the tie incident during the gala dinner?" Ava felt her face heat up. So Victoria had really told, and probably embellished the story quite a bit. He asked for help with his tie. I helped. It took less than 2 minutes. I didn't see a problem with that. "The problem," said Richard, each word loaded with polite venom, "is that crew members shouldn't have that kind of familiarity with passengers, especially first-class passengers. It creates inappropriate expectations. With all due respect, sir, I didn't create any expectations. I just did my job. Your job is to clean suites, not to make friends with rich men who might be bored and looking for entertainment." The insinuation was clear and disgusting. Ava clenched her fists, fighting to maintain composure. "That's not fair or true." "What is true," Richard continued, leaning forward, "is that you're new here, young, pretty, and some people might interpret that as opportunism. Mrs. Ashford, for example, is very concerned about the integrity of the ship services. Mrs. Ashford doesn't like employees who treat her like a normal human being," Ava responded, her patience finally running out. "She wants us to be invisible until she needs something. Sorry if that's not the type of service I provide." The silence that followed was heavy. Richard observed her with narrowed eyes, as if he were re-evaluating something. "Watch that sharp tongue, Miss Montgomery. It could cost you more than you imagine. Is that a threat, sir?" "It's advice." He leaned back in his chair, hands crossed over his abdomen. "It'll be clear. You will keep your distance from passenger Dan. You will limit yourself to strictly necessary service. If I receive one more complaint, no matter how small, you will disembark at the next port." "Understood." Ava swallowed hard. Disembarking meant being sent home, losing her salary, having a stain on her professional record. It meant disappointing her dad, grandmother Jake. It meant all the effort had been in vain. "Understood. Good. You may go." Ava stood up, her legs wobbly, and left the office. In the hallway she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes to contain the tears of anger and frustration. She had done everything right, had worked hard, been professional, hadn't crossed any line, and yet she was being punished. "Hey!" Sophie appeared beside her, concern stamped on her face. "How was it?" "Horrible. He practically called me a gold digger trying to seduce rich passengers. Son of a—" Sophie breathed deeply, controlling her anger. "This is because of Victoria, obviously, and Richard is loving having an excuse to put me in line." Ava wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders. "But I'm not giving up. I'll do my job. I'll avoid Dan, and I'll prove I deserve to be here. You already prove that every day, honey. But if you need me—" "I know. Thank you." The rest of the day was tense. Ava carefully avoided Suite 312, leaving it to clean when she was sure Daniel would be busy. When she saw him in the hallway, she looked away. When he tried to start a conversation in the elevator, she responded in polite monosyllables and got off at the next floor. It hurt more than she expected. That feeling of connection she had begun to feel, inappropriate, yes, but real, being cut off at the root. But Ava had survived worse things than a frustrated crush. She would survive this too. What she didn't expect was what would happen the next night. The ship was anchored off the coast of Barcelona. Most passengers had gone down for nighttime tours of the city. Ava was finishing her shift when Sophie came running, her face pale. "You need to come now." "What happened?" "It's Victoria. She's saying you stole from her." Ava's world stopped. "What? A diamond necklace? She said it was in her dresser drawer this morning and now it's gone. And she's saying you were the only person who entered the suite. That's a lie. I didn't even enter her suite today." "I know, but she's making a scene in the main lounge. Richard is already there, and she's demanding you be searched." Ava felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. This wasn't just an accusation, it was a trap, a way to destroy her reputation once and for all, to ensure she was not only fired, but potentially prosecuted. She put the necklace somewhere. She had to have, probably. But how to prove it? I don't know. Ava grabbed Sophie's hand, squeezing. "But I'm not running. You'll go there and face this." The main lounge was full of passengers when they arrived. Victoria was in the center, dramatic as always, one hand on her heart, the other gesturing widely. She wore a crimson evening dress that probably cost more than a compact car, and perfectly applied tears ran down her face without smudging her makeup. "It was her!" she shouted when she saw Ava. She had access to my suite. She was always envious, I saw it in her eyes. Mrs. Ashford, said Richard in his softest and most fawning tone, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Explanation? My necklace worth 200,000 euros is gone. And that stewardess was in my suite today, I wasn't, said Ava, her voice firm despite her racing heart. I didn't clean your suite today. It was Sophie. All heads turned to Sophie, who paled but maintained her posture. That's true. I took care of the royal suite today. Ava was in the suites on deck 6. Lies, you're covering for each other. We have records, Sophie continued, taking the digital device from her pocket. All staff check in when they enter each suite. The data is archived in the system. Richard took the device, checking the information with an increasingly uncomfortable expression. Indeed, Miss Montgomery hasn't entered the royal suite in the last 48 hours. Victoria went livid. Then it was someone else. But I know I was robbed. Are you just going to let this pass? We will investigate thoroughly, Mrs. Ashford, but we can't accuse someone without proof. Proof? You want proof? She looked around, seeking support in the crowd. And then her eyes stopped on Daniel, who was leaning against a column, observing everything with an unreadable expression. Mr. Dan, you also had problems with staff recently, didn't you? Your suite was invaded. Ava felt her blood freeze. She had helped clean up that mess. If he confirmed she was there alone with him, that she had free access. Daniel pushed away from the column, walking slowly to the center of the lounge. All eyes were on him now. There was something different in his posture, an authority he had kept hidden until then. My suite was invaded, he agreed calmly, but it wasn't by any crew member. It was an amateurish attempt to make it look like something was stolen when nothing was. Victoria blinked. What are you insinuating? I'm not insinuating anything. I'm saying that whoever went through my suite was looking for something specific and didn't find it. He looked at Richard, and there was steel in his gaze. And I am saying that if Mrs. Ashford's necklace really existed, which I have my doubts, then it's very well hidden somewhere. She put it herself. How dare you? Victoria was beet red now. Do you know who you're talking to? I know exactly who I'm talking to. And I suggest you stop this theater before you regret it. The silence was absolute. Ava watched Daniel as if seeing him for the first time. Who was he? Where did that authority come from? Why had Victoria suddenly seemed genuinely scared? Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Dan, perhaps we could discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. Unless Mrs. Ashford has real proof of a theft, this conversation is over. And then, to everyone's shock, he turned his back and left. Simply left, leaving Victoria splendidly furious and Richard completely disconcerted. Ava didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had been saved, for now. But now she was absolutely certain of one thing. Daniel wasn't just a bored, rich tourist. He was something much bigger, and she had just gotten into a story much more complicated than she could have imagined. The ship left Barcelona at dawn, heading for Mykonos. Ava hadn't slept. She had spent the entire night replaying the lounge events, trying to understand what exactly had happened. The way Daniel had spoken, the authority in his voice, the way even Richard had backed down. It wasn't normal. Rich tourists could be arrogant, but that was different. That was real power. She needed answers. And, contradicting all the rules she had just promised to follow, she knocked on the door of suite 312 at 7 in the morning. Daniel answered wearing only pajama pants, hair completely messy, eyes half closed with sleep. Ava, did something happen? You owe me an explanation. He blinked, as if processing slowly. Can it be after coffee? I don't function before 8? No? A slow smile appeared on his face. I see. You're angry. I'm confused and irritated and tired of being treated like a chess piece in some game I don't understand. She entered the suite without waiting for an invitation, turning to face him. Who are you? Daniel sighed, closing the door. He stood there for a moment, as if deciding something internally. Then he walked to the mini-fridge, grabbed water, drank half the bottle. You really want to know? I wouldn't have come here if I didn't. Okay. He sat on the edge of the bed, gesturing for her to sit too. Ava stood. My full name is Daniel Robert Prescott, Prescott Maritime Group. Have you heard of it? Ava's heart stopped. Prescott Maritime Group. The company that owned the ship where she was working. The company that owned entire fleets, ports, a fortune that regularly appeared on lists of the country's largest. No, liar. I saw your expression. Son of a... Ava sat down after all, because her legs had stopped working. You own this ship. Technically my father does. I'm just the heir who's trying not to be an heir. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, ancient frustration visible in every gesture. That's why I'm here, using a fake name, pretending to be an ordinary passenger, because for the first time in my life, I wanted to know what it's like to just be someone. You're kidding me. Tell me you're kidding. I wish I were. Ava stood up again, beginning to pace back and forth. Everything made sense now. The natural authority, the way Richard had backed down, even that conversation about traveling too much and feeling lonely. He wasn't a bored, rich tourist. He was the owner of the circus, so everything was a lie. All those conversations, that connection, I thought... She stopped, staring at him. Were you using me? Was it some kind of social experiment? Let's see how the poor stewardess reacts to the disguised billionaire heir. No! Daniel stood up too, his expression genuinely hurt. No, Ava, none of it was a lie. The conversations were real. What I feel for you is real. I just didn't know how to tell you without ruining everything. Ruin. You think hiding who you are didn't ruin things? I know, it was wrong. I should have told you from the beginning. He took a step toward her, hands extended as if he wanted to touch her but didn't dare. But you have to understand. My whole life people only saw me as the Prescott surname, as money, as connections, as something useful, never as me. And when I met you, when you answered me with all that sincerity, it was the first time I felt truly seen. But I wasn't really seeing you. I was seeing a lie. It wasn't a lie. It was just incomplete. Daniel sighed, letting his hands fall. Look, I understand if you hate me now, I deserve it. But you need to know that what happened last night, me defending you, wasn't out of pity or superiority. It was because I know you're innocent, and because I wasn't going to let anyone hurt you. Ava wanted to stay angry, wanted to scream, slam the door, never talk to him again. But there was something in his vulnerability, in the way he seemed genuinely sorry, that made her hesitate. Why are you here, Daniel? Why run away from your own family? Because they want me to be a copy of my father. Cold, calculating, only concerned with profits and appearances. They want me to marry someone suitable, take over the company, continue the legacy. And I don't want any of that. He sat down again, looking tired. Or at least I thought I didn't want it. Until I realized that running away doesn't solve anything either, just postpones. And what will solve it? I don't know. But I think it has to do with making real choices, with deciding what kind of person I want to be, regardless of what they expect of me. He looked at her, and there was so much feeling in that look that Ava felt her heart squeeze, and maybe it has to do with finding someone who makes me want to be better. They stood like that, in the heavy silence of the suite, the ship swaying gently beneath them. Ava knew she should leave, knew this was even more complicated now than it was before. But her feet refused to move. I need to process this, she said finally. I understand, and you need to understand that it doesn't change anything. I'm still an employee. You're still, well, you. There's no future in this. I know. So why does it feel like neither of us is moving? Daniel smiled sadly. Because sometimes the head knows one thing, but the heart is stubborn and stupid. Ava almost laughed. Almost. I need to go to work. Okay. But when she passed by him toward the door, Daniel gently held her wrist. Ava, yes? Don't regret meeting me. Please. Even if it goes wrong, even if it's complicated, don't regret it. She looked at his hand on her wrist, then at his face. I'm trying to decide if you're the best or worst thing that's ever happened to me. Can I be both? Apparently. This time she managed to leave. Managed to get back to work, keep her head down, focus on tasks. But all day she felt that weight, the awareness that something fundamental had changed, that no matter how much she tried to deny it, no matter how impossible it was, there were real feelings growing. And real feelings, as her dad always said, were both a blessing and a curse. In the afternoon, while folding towels in the storage room, Sophie appeared with a strange expression. "You won't believe what I just heard. After yesterday, I'll believe anything. Dan, or rather Daniel Prescott, because yes, I found out who he is, just had a huge fight with someone on the phone. He was on the VIP deck, thinking he was alone. But Marcus heard everything." Ava straightened up. Fight with whom? From what Marcus understood, it was his father. And it was related to you. To me. Apparently the family found out he's here on the ship, and found out about you too. The father is demanding he return to Jacksonville immediately. Said he's making a fool of himself with a stewardess. Ava felt her blood boil. How kind of him. But Daniel refused. Said he's fed up with being controlled. That he's going to make his own decisions. And that if his father doesn't like it... Sophie made a dramatic pause. He can look for another heir. He didn't say that. He did. Marcus almost fell off the railing from laughing so hard. Said he'd never seen anyone tell a Prescott to go to hell before. Ava didn't know how to feel. On one hand, the idea of Daniel defending her, choosing her, was almost too fantastic to be real. On the other, the notion of causing a family rupture, of being seen as the intruder who diverted the heir from the right path, was terrifying. This is going to go wrong, Sophie, in every possible way. Probably. Her friend grabbed her hand, squeezing. But you know what's funny? You're starting to really care about him, and he obviously cares about you. And I know it's scary, but it's also kind of beautiful. Two completely different worlds meeting. In the movies, maybe. In real life, one world always crushes the other. Or both learn to create a new world, different. Ava wanted to believe that, wanted to believe that love was enough, that true feelings overcame social barriers and economic differences. But she had grown up seeing her mother, who had died when she was a child, work herself to exhaustion, seeing her dad battle to maintain dignity in a world that constantly reminded him he was less than. She knew money and power had real weight, and that sometimes love, no matter how genuine, simply wasn't enough. But then, that night, something happened that changed everything. The ship was supposed to arrive in Mykonos the next morning, but around midnight, a storm began to form. It wasn't something uncommon in the Mediterranean at that time of year, but this one was stronger than expected. The sea became violent, waves hitting the hull with frightening force, the wind howling like something alive. Ava was in the crew quarters when the first alarm sounded. She ran out into the corridor and found chaos, staff running in all directions, confused orders being shouted, and a strange smell in the air. "What's happening?" she asked Sophie, who was coming from the opposite direction. "Problem with the navigation system. An oil leak in the engine room. The captain is trying to control it, but..." She stopped, her face going pale. "Ava, they're saying it might have been sabotage." "Sabotage? Who the hell would sabotage a ship full of passengers?" "I don't know, but we need to evacuate the south sector, now." The next few minutes were a blur of adrenaline and terror. Ava helped guide elderly passengers to meeting points, calmed crying children, checked cabins to make sure no one had been left behind. And it was during one of these checks that she found Victoria. The woman was trapped under a shelf that had fallen during a particularly violent wave. She was conscious but clearly in pain, real tears streaming down her face. Ava didn't think twice. She ran to help, using all her strength to lift the shelf enough for Victoria to crawl out. "Can you walk?" I think so." "Then let's go. We need to get out of here." "Why are you helping me?" Victoria looked at her with something between surprise and shame. "After everything I did, because it's the right thing to do, and because despite you being horrible to me, you don't deserve to die on a sinking ship." Ava put Victoria's arm over her shoulders, supporting her weight. "Now move, before I change my mind." They had barely left the cabin when another wave hit the ship. The corridor tilted at a dangerous angle, and both were thrown against the wall. Ava hit her head, seeing stars, but forced herself to stay conscious. Come on, come on. When they finally reached the meeting point, exhausted and soaked, Daniel was there, and the expression on his face when he saw her was pure relief mixed with terror. Ava! He ran to her, his hands framing her face, eyes examining her frantically. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, but she needs medical help. Ava gestured to Victoria, who was being supported by other crew members. To hell with Victoria. His voice was hoarse, desperate. I thought he'd lost you. I thought... And then, right there in the middle of the chaos, with the ship swaying violently and people screaming around them, Daniel kissed her. It wasn't a soft or romantic kiss. It was intense, urgent, full of all the fear and relief and unspoken feelings between them. And Ava, who should pull away, who should remember the rules and social differences and everything that was wrong, just kissed back. Because in the end, when you're face to face with the possibility of death, nothing else matters except what's real. When they separated, both were breathless. You're an idiot, said Ava. I know. And this doesn't solve anything. I know that too. But she touched his face, a smile emerging despite everything. Do it again. And he did. The storm passed. The ship, by miracle, and the competence of some truly dedicated crew members, including Marcus, who revealed he had training in maritime emergencies, didn't sink. But it was damaged enough to need to be towed to the nearest port, Santorini. And with the damage came the investigation, because the suspicion of sabotage couldn't be ignored. Ava spent the following hours alternating between helping with cleanup, giving statements to maritime authorities, and avoiding Richard's censorious looks, who had clearly seen the kiss, or had heard about it. On a ship, news spread faster than fire, but she was strangely calm. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe it was the adrenaline still running through her veins, or maybe it was simply the clarity that came from almost dying, the certainty that some things were worth risking, regardless of the consequences. Daniel disappeared during the morning. When he reappeared, he looked like he had aged 10 years. He found Ava on the deck, looking at the volcanic island approaching, and positioned himself beside her without saying anything for a long moment. My father is coming here, he said finally. I understand. And my mother. And probably half the company's board of directors. He let out the air, slowly. They're going to want damage control, cover up the sabotage story, protect the company's image. And the culprit? They still don't know who it was. But the evidence points to negligence by Captain Marcus Thompson. He was my father's political appointment, incompetent but well-connected, and now they're going to try to blame anyone but him. Ava felt a familiar chill. Anyone. Like a stewardess who made a report of irregularities days ago? Daniel looked at her, and there was anger and frustration in his eyes. I won't let that happen. I don't know if you'll have a choice. There's always a choice, and I've already chosen. He took her hand, intertwining fingers, a gesture that seemed both natural and revolutionary there, in public, where anyone could see. I'm going to resign from the board. I'm going to expose everything that's wrong with the company. And I'm going to clear your name, no matter what happens. Daniel. My name is Daniel, and you can call me that. Daniel, she corrected, testing the weight of the real name on her tongue. You're going to destroy your relationship with your family. You're going to throw away your future. Why? Because it's not the future I want. It never was. He turned to her completely, both hands holding hers now. And because I met you. You who saved the woman who tried to destroy you. You who works 12 hours a day and still finds time to photograph sunsets. You who sees me as a person, not as a surname. How can I go back to that life after knowing this exists? Ava felt tears burn her eyes. This won't work. Your world and mine aren't as different as you think, and even if they were, I don't care. He touched her face, thumb caressing her cheek. I love you, Ava Montgomery. And I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, I know there are 1,000 reasons why it shouldn't work, but I love you. And I'm going to prove it can work if you let me try. You're crazy. Maybe. But you are too, because you're smiling. And she was. She was smiling even with the tears, even with all the fear and uncertainty. I love you too, you idiot. The kiss this time was different, not urgent or desperate, but deep and true, more a promise than an impulse. And when they separated, Ava saw Sophie dramatically applauding from the other side of the deck, Marcus whistling, and even some passengers smiling, but she also saw Richard, and his expression promised nothing good. The Prescott family arrived in Santorini like a force of nature. Robert Prescott was exactly what Ava expected, tall, imposing, with that presence that occupied space just by existing. Margaret Prescott was cold and perfect beauty, every hair in place, every gesture calculated. And Emily, Daniel's sister, was a surprise, young, vibrant, with intelligent eyes that evaluated Ava in seconds and seemed to approve. The meeting happened in Richard's office, which had ceded the space with obvious discomfort. Ava was summoned, still wearing her work uniform, still feeling her body ache from the previous night. Daniel was there, posture tense but determined, and his parents sitting like judges in a tribunal. "This is the employee?" asked Margaret, voice polite but icy. "Ava Montgomery?" "Yes," Richard responded quickly. "There have been some irregularities involving—" "Silence," Robert cut in without even looking at the director. His eyes were fixed on Daniel. "You're going to explain to me what the hell is going on. First you disappear without warning, then you call me saying you're resigning from the board. And now I discover you're involved with an employee. I'm not involved with an employee. I'm in love with a woman who happens to work here." Daniel didn't look away. "And yes, I'm going to resign. Because I won't be part of a company that neglects safety, that protects incompetence through political connections, and that treats people as disposable. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly. Captain Thompson was your appointment. You knew he was incompetent, and you still kept him, because he has connections that interest you. How many other decisions like this have you made, Dad? How many lives have you put at risk for politics?" The silence was deadly. Margaret looked at her husband with something that could be concern. Emily had wide eyes, and Richard looked like he wanted to disappear into the chair. "Careful, Daniel," said Robert, voice low and dangerous. "You're accusing very serious things. I'm affirming very serious things, and we'll make them public if necessary." Daniel finally looked at Ava, and there was apology in his eyes. "But before that, there's something that needs to be clarified. Richard, you wanted to pressure me to confirm that Miss Montgomery was a suspect in theft, didn't you?" Richard went pale. I have the messages you sent me. I have witnesses to conversations. You tried to use me to harm an innocent employee because she didn't fit your pattern of how crew members should behave." Daniel turned to his father. "Is this the type of management you approve of?" Robert was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up slowly and walked to the window. "Margaret, Emily, leave." "Robert," his wife began. "Leave, now." The two women obeyed. Emily winked encouragingly at Ava as she passed. Richard tried to leave too, but Robert stopped him. "You stay. And you?" He looked at Ava too. The silence that followed was tense. Robert stood with his back turned, looking at the port outside, hands crossed behind his back. "Do you know what I built, Daniel?" he said finally. "I started from nothing. My father was a boat mechanic. I started cleaning decks. I worked every damn position to get where I am, and I did that so you wouldn't have to, so you'd have options I never had. I know that. No, you don't know. You were born into luxury. You never went hungry, never worried about money, never were looked down on because of where you came from." He turned, and for the first time, Ava saw something beyond hardness. She saw tiredness, and maybe even regret. "And you're right, about Thompson, about political decisions. I lost my way, forgot what mattered." Daniel blinked, clearly surprised. "Dad, but I won't let you throw everything away for romanticism. I won't allow you to destroy your future for—" He looked at Ava, evaluative. "However admirable she may be, I'm not throwing anything away, I'm choosing. Choosing wrong is also a choice. Robert returned to the table, sitting heavily. Richard, you're fired. Remove yourself from the ship before I change my mind and involve justice for defamation and coercion. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, and left, practically running. As for you, Robert looked at Daniel, I won't accept your resignation. Not yet, but he'll do this. 6 months. You have 6 months to prove you can make real changes in the company. Clean up corruption, improve protocols, make it worthwhile. If you succeed, maybe he'll believe you're serious about this. And if I don't accept your conditions, then you really resign, and I respect that. But you lose any influence you'd have to change things. Robert turned to Ava. And you? What's your name again? Ava Montgomery, sir. Ava Montgomery. He studied her for a long time. My son is clearly in love with you. And from what my daughter told me, because yes, she called me earlier giving me a half-hour lecture, you saved people during the storm, including that annoying woman who falsely accused you. Victoria, yes, sir. Why did you do that? Ava met his gaze, refusing to seem intimidated even though she was terrified inside. Because it was the right thing to do. Right according to whom? According to my own moral compass, which with all due respect doesn't need your approval, sir. For the first time, Robert Prescott smiled. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I understand why my son likes you. You have a backbone. He stood up. You're fired from this ship. Ava's heart plummeted. Sir, but, he continued, I'm offering a position at the head office in Jacksonville. Hotel management, service protocol development. Triple the salary you make here. Do you accept? Ava was speechless. I don't understand. My son is going to need someone to keep him honest, to remind him where we came from and why it matters. And you clearly aren't afraid to speak your mind. Robert grabbed his briefcase. But let me be clear, I'm not doing this for romanticism. I'm doing it because maybe, just maybe, you're exactly the kind of influence this company needs. Think about it. And then he left, leaving Ava and Daniel alone in the office, both processing what the hell had just happened. Your dad is, Ava began. Complicated. Very complicated. Daniel laughed, a somewhat hysterical laugh, but I think that was approval, like in the Robert Prescott version of approval. I think so. Ava sat down, her legs wobbly. He offered me a job, Dan. Daniel. Whatever. Are you going to accept? I don't know. I'll be honest. I'm kind of in shock. She looked at him, really looked. What just happened to our life? I think it changed completely. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. But it's still your choice. If you want to go back to Jacksonville, finish this voyage, follow your original path, I understand. I won't pressure you, even being in love with me, especially being in love with you, because I know that real love isn't imprisoning someone. It's giving wings and hoping they choose to come back. Ava touched his face, memorizing every detail, the small cut on his eyebrow, the brown eyes that truly saw her, the way he smiled, half crooked, half charming. You've irritated me since day one. I know, and you keep irritating me. It'll probably get worse. And your family is insane, can't deny that. And I'll have to move to Jacksonville, leave my family, enter a completely new world where I don't know anyone. True. And still, she smiled, feeling tears in her eyes again, but this time they were good. Still, I choose you. I choose us. I choose to try. Daniel's smile was like the sun rising. Are you sure? None. But I think the best things in life come without certainty. She pulled him closer. So kiss me again, billionaire heir. And then take me to meet your sister because she seems cool. And then we'll figure out together how to make this madness work. And he kissed. Kissed like a promise. Like a beginning. Like everything they would still build together, because sometimes love appears in the most unlikely places. Sometimes it happens between a stewardess and an heir on a ship in the middle of a storm, proving that the best fairy tales are the ones you write in real life, with all the imperfections and surprises included. Epilogue. 6 months later, Ava Montgomery stood in front of the tallest building in Jacksonville, looking up and trying to believe it was real. Montgomery Institute. The letters shone on the facade, elegant and impossible. A training center for low-income young people interested in maritime and hospitality careers. Full scholarships, housing, everything included. It was her first major project at Prescott Maritime Group, and it had been hell to approve. Required convincing skeptical investors, dealing with infinite bureaucracy, and repeatedly proving that yes, she deserved to be there not for being Daniel's girlfriend, but because she knew what she was doing. Nervous? The familiar voice came from behind her. Daniel approached, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Drip coffee, as she had taught him to like. The inauguration is in an hour. Terrified. What if no one shows up? What if everyone thinks it's pretentious? What if... Breathe. He handed her the coffee, kissing her forehead. It'll work out, like it always does. Ava took a sip, letting the hot liquid calm her. The last 6 months had been a roller coaster. Moving to Jacksonville. Meeting Grandma May, who had immediately adopted Daniel as an honorary grandson and kept making sweet tea to help the boy put on a little weight. Working with Robert, who continued to be complicated, but had proven to have a rigid code of ethics when you provoked him enough. Becoming friends with Emily, who was hilarious and loyal, and had appointed herself guardian of her brother's relationship. And Daniel, who had kept his promise to make real changes, who had fired corrupt employees, implemented new safety protocols, transformed the company into something more human, who continued to be annoyingly perfectionist, but now let her mess up his minimalist apartment with plants and family photos. "My parents are coming, Jake," her brother warned, appearing with their dad. Thomas Montgomery was uncomfortable in a suit, but smiling proudly. "And Grandma is arguing with the driver because she wants to drive." "Of course she does," Ava laughed. "Dad, are you okay?" "I am, honey, just proud, very proud." He hugged her tight. "Your mom would be so happy." She hugged back, allowing herself a moment of emotion before composing herself. "Shall we go in?" "I think it's time." The inauguration was everything she had hoped for and more. Young people from communities around Jacksonville, from rural areas, from the coast, all there, eyes shining with hope. Authorities made boring political speeches, but Ava barely heard. She was focused on the students' faces, seeing herself reflected in them, seeing possibilities. When it was her turn to speak, Ava climbed onto the small stage set up in the courtyard. The afternoon sun gilded everything, and for a moment she remembered that dawn on the ship when it all began. "I don't come from money," she began, "without notes, just heart. I was born in Jacksonville, daughter of a fisherman. My family fought for every penny to put me through college. And when I got my first job on a luxury ship, I thought I had made it, that I had reached the top of what someone like me could reach." She paused, finding Daniel's gaze in the audience. "But then I met someone who showed me there are no ceilings, that limits are constructions we can destroy, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the world conspires to give you opportunities you didn't even know you could dream of." She gestured to the building behind her. "This institute exists because I was lucky, because I was in the right place at the right time. But you won't need luck. You'll have training, support, real opportunities. And when you leave here, you're going to change your lives. And who knows, other people's lives too." The applause was loud and warm, and when Ava came down from the stage, she went straight to Daniel, who hugged her as if she had just changed the world, which, in a way, she had, at least hers. "I love you," she said, "right there in front of everyone. I know, and I love you too." He smiled that crooked smile. "But you know we still have that horrible dinner with my mother tonight, right? She's going to interrogate you about wedding plans again. Let the interrogation begin. I won't give in, neither will I. We're in this together, always." And there, under the Jacksonville sun, surrounded by family and friends and students full of hope, Ava Montgomery knew with absolute certainty she was 30 years old when she spent 30 days on a ship, not knowing she was next to the billionaire who would love her. But what she had discovered in those days, and continued discovering every day since then, was much bigger than any fairy tale. It was real. It was imperfect. It was gloriously, wonderfully complicated. And it was theirs. So, did you enjoy this story? If you loved this journey of Ava and Daniel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell. By doing this, you'll be helping other people just like you receive great stories like this one. Your support makes all the difference, so I can continue bringing content that warms the heart. Thank you so much for being here.